Hi Sarah, can you introduce yourself and tell us how long you've had type 1 for?
Yeah, sure. So, my name's Sarah Crowley, and I'm from Aberdeen in South Wales. A few things about me. I'm a twin mum, so I've got 3.5-year-old boy-girl twins, which is wonderful. And I'm a big Cardiff City fan. And of all the things, I've also been living with type 1 diabetes for 33 years. So I was diagnosed age 3 back in 1990.
Where's the best place you visited on your travels?
Before we had this interview, I was thinking about all the places I've been, and I feel really grateful actually that I think it was 21 countries I've managed to visit. And I really think actually having type 1 so young made me want to travel and experience a lot of the world while I could. So yeah, I felt really grateful. Some of the best places, the furthest place I've been is Australia. So I really wanted to, it was on my bucket list to want to go to the other side of the world. Um, and some other places that I thought were really cool was when I went to Asia. So I recently went to Bali and Singapore, which was, I loved experiencing Asia as well.
Have you got any more bucket list travel destinations?
Yeah, I've always had a bucket list. It felt really important to me to have some sort of hope and to want to work towards different goals. And some of them were travel related, some of them weren't. Some of them were the bigger things, some of them were smaller things. But yeah, Australia was up there on my bucket list for a while, and also wanted to go to do a skydive. So I was lucky enough to do that while I was there as well.
Have you got any stories about traveling with type 1?
Yeah, so the year I turned 30, that was a big deal for me. I think just because when I was a teenager, 30 seemed a long way off, and there was a few things that were said that made me think that wouldn't have been possible. So yeah, in my 30th year, I sort of dedicated some of it to there's a lot of diabetes stories in this travel adventure. So I went to North America. And there was four main destinations on there that I wanted to go to, because the first one was I went to Boston. And when I was younger, I'd read something about something called the Joslin Diabetes Centre. I didn't even know what it was. I was really young. But because it was in Boston, I decided to add Boston to my list. So I thought one day I'm going to go to Boston. I had a really great time. Um, and funnily enough, when I went to Fenway Park, which is the baseball centre there was a diabetes, a group of young people with diabetes on a trip there, which was just total coincidence. But yeah, we bumped into them, so I've done a chat. One of the other destinations that year was going to Nashville, because there was a girl who'd written a book. Her name's Amy Markle. She'd written a book about type 1 and disordered eating, and that was something I'd struggled with growing up as well. And because she sort of validated my experiences, and I read the book and I felt really inspired that I could overcome these things and live well with type 1 after those struggles. I said by the time I was 30, I'd wanted to meet her in person and thank her. And we had a lovely day together, us and our families. And then we went over to Canada as part of the same trip to go to the Banting Museum. And that's where Sir Frederick Banting, who was one of the men that discovered insulin, had the thought that he could do that. And so I went there, and that was a big bucket list tick as well, because there's a place there called the Flame of Hope, and it's a candle or a big flame that burns for anybody who's living with or has been affected by diabetes. And apparently, if there's ever a cure, that person will fly there and distinguish the flame. But a lot of people sort of go there who have got connections with diabetes as well. That was a big one. And then at the same time, I'd been put in touch with somebody who also was living with type 1 diabetes through a pen pal scheme through Beyond Type 1. And this was the year that they were cycling. There was 20 cyclists, amateur cyclists, with type 1 diabetes, cycling from New York to San Francisco. So I didn't tell him, but I secretly went to San Francisco in California. And as he crossed the bridge, I was at the finish line to congratulate and support him. And there's a documentary about that trip called Bike Beyond, which is on YouTube, that anybody can watch. It's really great to see how they managed to cycle America with type 1. Absolutely amazing.
How did you come to write the guide for traveling with type 1?
Yeah, so a few years ago, I started off my career as a teacher, and I always had jobs that were around children and young people. But then I realised that I wanted to sort of marry up my skills doing that with improving education for young adults, because I felt as I was growing up, there was so many things that I needed support with or needed information on that wasn't always or didn't really come up enough in my clinical appointments.
Yeah.
And so the travel guide was actually one of 8 and soon to be 9 other booklets that I just felt is really important that we have this education and can also have it to hand when we need it, because we need all this information to be able to live well and live with type 1. But yeah, and so you could have that and reflect on maybe before you're booking a holiday, so know that you've got the things that you need. But yeah, there's lots of things. And again, when I was growing up, some of the information I was given was like pamphlets around these topics, but they didn't really go in enough detail. It was just like bullet points. But I felt I needed more of a sort of a guide or a booklet on these things. And so other young people, when I was asking them when I was doing this as a work role, felt the same, that there were some topics that they just would really benefit from having more information on and discussions with other people around that as well. So that's part of the Seren Connect program, is you can meet other people similar to you to just discuss and share all the good things that we are, and share some of the struggles as well. But the travel booklet was part of that.
Well, what would you recommend using to store like insulin in the heat abroad or like on the plane?
Yeah, another thing, isn't it? We have to be really careful of how we store things and how long you can keep them cool for and different things. So I used something called a Frio bag. So a Frio bag is specifically aimed at keeping things cool, and they're also in the shape of things for your diabetes as well. So you can get different sizes. They obviously do cost money. You need to purchase them yourselves, but they were quite a big, good investment. Sorry, not a big investment. That you can reuse them as well. So just before you travel, you put them in water, and the crystals in them sort of expand, and it keeps it cool for quite a number of hours. So that's how I managed to travel to Australia. Or even if you're just out for the day and you're going somewhere locally, if you're just going to the beach with your friends, you might need you could use it then. So it's a really good little piece of kit to have if you like to travel and go to hot places.
What did you learn while you were writing the guide?
I think one of the main things I learned about when I wrote the guide was just how much there is for us to learn, and not just learn, but to consider each time that we travel. And again, that could be a short space, a short time, whether you're going away for a gap year, there's lots of things we need to consider. You can never, I still get a bit embarrassed by this, to be honest, but you can never pack light with type 1. You have to be really creative in how you fit everything in and the quantity of how much you take, because you need space. My mum would always be somebody that would tell me, you need space upon space upon space, just in case. And just trying to find space for all the things you need and the extra stuff you need to consider. And what else did I learn? And just the differences between going from somewhere that's hot to somewhere that's cold. I've been on quite a number of skiing holidays, and even then you'd expect to be in like a colder climate, there'd be things you'd need to do. But because you're skiing and you're exercising, and because you've got layers on, your body's actually really warm. So it's managing those things and knowing how they impact on your body and on you. And you can prepare as much as you think you can, but you won't ever know what you need to do and how you need to take care of yourself until you're in that moment. So it's just to take precaution, isn't it? Because even though a holiday should be a break from routine, holidays for people with type 1 are often harder and more work, but very worth still going on all the same.
Absolutely. And what's the one thing you think everyone with type 1 should know about traveling and take away?
I think it would be, I've got experience of this, is, you get a travel letter that you can take from your team that tells you that you can take all the things that you need. In 33 years, I've only ever been asked to show mine at the airport once. And I'd been to Australia and back, no problem. I didn't have to show anything. They just took it at face value that I needed these things. And then I came back and I went to Ireland a week later, and it was going over to Ireland that they were like, can we see your letter? I had to pull everything out and show them everything. And I'd never had to do that before. So I guess my one piece of advice is, even though you've probably travelled and you may travel a few times and never need to show it, never take that risk
No.
because it's just not worth putting your holiday.
Yeah, absolutely not.
And the other thing is I don't think I'll ever lose the anxiety of going through the airport. I always feel
No.
that I'm going to come up against somebody that um, might be having a bad day. This is probably not true, but these are the thoughts that go through my head
Yeah.
of what if that person's having a bad day or they don't understand diabetes and they just want to, you know, make my life a bit more difficult. And that's never happened, but I just get this
No.
anxiety of what if? So how I sort of combat that, I just make sure I have my words clear of what I would say, how I would deal with that, and just to be confident in what I'm saying, but be respectful, but advocate for myself. And I do that whether I go to a gig as well. It's not just traveling, you know, anytime you've got to take things through. But yeah, I never lose that anxiety really. And just one more story about when I did go to Australia. I remember telling my mum, um, I said, oh, I was when I was 24, so I wasn't, you know, young.
Yeah.
I said, oh, I'm going to go to Australia. And she said, but what about your diabetes? And I was like, well, what about it? I can't leave it here. It has to come with
No.
me. So another thing is your parents will always worry. Keep them in the loop.
Yeah.
You know, let them know you're safe. And yeah, and I also brought my little travel mascot.
Oh,
This is Finnegan. I bought him on my first flight, which was to Dublin, and he's been all around the world with me. He's been to New York and yeah, Bali and skiing, you name it, he's been there. And I bought him because when I started traveling, selfies wasn't a thing. So I used to document, you know, by taking pictures of him.
yeah.
I should show him my age now. But I love having a travel mascot
Okay.
and yeah, lots of stories and pictures of Finnegan on my travels with me as well. But you know, totally doable with type 1. Does take that extra bit of thinking space, but there is no reason why you can't
Everyone a bit
travel
dual.
for as long as you want to and the destinations you want to, providing, I think it is, isn't it, about making a bit of space for your diabetes
Yeah.
so that it doesn't distract you from the things that you want to do in life and in travel as well. So yeah, I'm sure there's lots of places on your bucket list. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much.
you're very welcome. Thank you very much, Dr. Callum.
Hi, Sophie.
Hi.
So can you tell us about your recent holiday?
Yeah, so this year I've decided to kind of, instead of doing like a big holiday, do lots of city breaks. So I've just done Lake Como, and I've literally just got back from Budapest on Sunday. So two kind of short trips over like 3 days. But lots of experience and good and bad points with diabetes.
So did everything go according to plan?
Um, Mostly. So my trip to Lake Como was brilliant. Security were amazing going through. Really like kind of going through, I understand that I normally just ask for a pat down. One of my kind of things that I had a bad experience last year, I was going to Poland and my spare Dexcom Omnipods went through this X-ray scanner. And when I was in Poland then, it was my last but one day, my Dexcom just would not connect. My transmitter had gone through, which was due to be changed, and it just completely didn't work. Luckily, I had the finger pricker and everything. So one of the things I do now going from the airport is I just ask for all my kind of medical supplies not to be go through security. So linking to that, on my way to Budapest, we flew from Stansted, and they'd previously had a high risk alert the day before. So when I got asked if I could be patted down rather using the scanners and having all my supplies scanned, um, they weren't the most cooperative. And this is the only situation I've ever had this. Similar to what Sarah have just said, with everything, I've never had a bad experience. I kind of had to argue everything, even though I had proof of prescription, I had a letter. They took every single item out that I had and swabbed every single thing. They were arguing that my Omnipod controller was a phone. And I took the kind of it to show them everything. They just didn't really want to understand. So it was quite frustrating.
Yeah.
But in security about 45 minutes just trying to get through. I got taken to a room and patted down. I had to sign paperwork. I've never had anything like it. And it was just one member of staff that was kind of lacking in education, I think, in diabetes. So I did email Stansted Airport afterwards and said I did provide every kind of documentation. But when I was waiting, I did find out that someone had previously tried to take a walking stick in, but it was actually a sword. So I kind of understand why they were so kind of high risk with everything as well. But I think if you haven't traveled before, that would have been a really scary experience. Because it was only myself and my friend. She didn't get told anything. I kind of just got taken to a room to be patted down. So that was definitely the most traumatic diabetes experience I've ever had traveling.
So what are your top 3 tips while traveling then with type 1?
You can't ever be prepared enough. I think there's always something that can go wrong. And one of the other things I learned previously on the way back from Lake Como, we flew from Milan, and there was not one single plug in the airport. So luckily I had a power bank charged, and I had all my wires, making sure they were all USB ones that I could use, so I could charge my phone from a Dexcom, my Omnipod controller. So always have a power bank just for your devices. I learnt because we had a long time in that airport, and it was really difficult. There were the language barriers. Another tip I would definitely say is this year I've traveled with friends quite a lot rather than family. So kind of making sure they're aware of your diabetes. Some of my friends I've gone away with this year I've only known over the last couple of months. So they've kind of got to know what type of beeps the Dexcom and Omnipod are doing. So we've got some inside jokes calling it my beeper. But they get a bit worried if any beeps are going off because they think it's just me. So but kind of talk them through what's going on so they know your hypo symptoms. If I was walking around, we did a lot, 20,000 steps a day in Budapest, sightseeing. So I would kind of say, look, I need to make sure that my bag's fully stocked on hypo treatment. So I took loads of packs of Skittles, so I knew that I always had them with me. They could go through security completely fine. And they would pack extra things in their bags as well then, which was quite nice. So if my bag got lost or stolen, they still had space, which was really good. So I'd say, yeah, definitely just communicate with everyone on your trip, so that you feel more at ease when you're there.
Great, thank you.
Next up then, Josh, we have Mike, who's a young leader from North, and he's just climbed Kilimanjaro. So he's going to talk about his experience of climbing Kilimanjaro with type 1.
Right then. Right. Yeah, I mean, I don't even know where to start, to be honest, because it was a journey of a lifetime, to be fair. One of the toughest things I've ever done, one of the hardest things, and one of the most life-changing things I've ever done. And yeah, I mean, obviously doing it alone was already hard enough, and then obviously putting diabetes on top of that made it 10 times harder. But I feel like a few words have been mentioned so far since I've been on the call. It's like preparation and organization. It's like you can never over prepare enough. You can never be over organized. It's like they're the 2 main categories for me. That was the reason why I climbed Kilimanjaro, and diabetes was the least of my worries while I was over there. I think I had 1 hypo over the course of the 8 days on the mountain. Obviously, because I was expecting a lot more. There was obviously a lot of exercise and a lot of lack of sleep. Appetite weren't the greatest. Obviously, the higher you get, you lose your appetite. So I was a little bit concerned about stepping into something like this. It was the first ever time doing any challenge like this before. Like I've lived abroad, I've climbed mountains in the UK, I exercise all the time, but there's always something in the back of your mind that obviously it's still a new challenge, and it's just expecting anything so that you prepare for everything. It's the first time I've said that, to be fair. Expect for anything to allow yourself to prepare for everything. And I feel like that was the biggest thing for me. I went into it open-minded that anything could happen, anything could get thrown at me, any obstacle could come in my way. But because of that, it allowed me to prepare in the best way possible, which is why, for me, looking back on it now and reflecting back on it, it was the best experience I've ever had, ever. And yeah, and that's why I booked my next one in November, but I won't go too much into that just yet.
We want to surprise you, Mike, to be honest. If the next slide can go on. We've got a little video that you recorded. You probably know what it is already, but just to give everyone else a little snippet of your experience as well.
Yeah, that's fine. But like that sense of achievement when I got to that top was It's because it's been a goal. I've just got goosebumps when you ask me that question. I probably will cry at the top, to be deadly honest, just because I know it's been a dream and goal of mine for 4 years now since I first booked it in 2018. So obviously to eventually get there and do it and get to the top and see the views and be with the group of people that I'm going with, and obviously know that I've done it for diabetes and I've achieved that goal being diabetic. It's gonna be a special moment. I'm gonna spend a good amount of time taking it in and really ensuring that moment sticks with me forever. I'm gonna start crying now.
I mean, yeah, wow. What did happen up there? You know, was it emotional?
Well, you can see now, like, I even just watching the video back, like, I'm getting like emotional now just thinking about it. Not gonna lie, there was no views. There was no views. I was expecting to see like miles and miles and miles. I couldn't see 6 feet in front of me because the snow cloud that we were in. But yeah, just like listening to me prior to that, and I didn't have a clue how I was gonna feel. Even though I said I was gonna cry and get emotional and stuff like that, but I didn't know exactly how I was gonna feel at the top. And now looking back on it, me sitting here now reflecting on it, like even now I'm getting goosebumps and I'm getting upset and I'm getting like obviously happy tears. It was honestly it was the best thing I've ever felt in my life, best moment in my life ever. And I'm just like obviously outside of me now, I'm just hoping that by me feeling proud to do that, it just opens up someone else's eyes to go and smash this life for them. Even with diabetes, because they can do.
How does that make you feel then, Mike? Go on, in front of everyone here.
You know what, I've watched that video about 10 times and still gets emotional every time I watch it. Literally. Like, and that's me, like, you know what, it is hard to put into words the feelings that it creates when you get to the top. And especially how 10 times harder it actually was. Obviously, the group that I did it with, they did it last year as well, and the weather at the top was unbelievable. It was obviously all sunshine, rainbows. You could see for miles and miles. You watch the sunset as it comes up. So obviously that's what I was expecting and hoping for, but it never happened. It ended up being -30. I was frozen. I had frostbite. I was literally. It was honestly the weather conditions were absolutely brutal, and like yeah, it was. I mean, that just made the achievement 10 times better. Because even on that day, even on the summit day when we climbed to the top, getting battered by hailstone, winds, rain, snow, sleet, miles per hour winds that you could ever imagine. Like honest to God, it was so tough. But I still had no problems with my diabetes going up. But obviously that just comes back to me doing all the stuff in the lead up as well. So like, yeah, watching that video, it is actually hard for me to watch because it actually hasn't. I don't think it's actually properly sunk in that I've done it. But yeah, it's definitely going to be one thing that doesn't leave my thoughts or feelings anytime soon. Like,
I promise you, we'll stop embarrassing you in a minute. But is
that's all
there
right,
anything that pops in your head when you think of what you do, especially when you plan for a trip?
To be honest, I just had loads of conversations. I feel like that's what helped me out. I couldn't, like, it's hard to, like, I can't even count how many conversations I had. I had that many with different diabetics, different doctors, different nurses, just to get different opinions and different points of views, because obviously it was something brand new to me, even though I knew what I was going into, but at the same time I didn't, because weather can change, whatever, anything else can happen, anything else can get thrown. So I just tried to have as many conversations as possible, just so my brain was filled up with as much information as possible. And so no matter what happened, no matter what got thrown at me, I was prepared in that sense as well. So I feel like if I didn't have those conversations with GPs, nurses, doctors, yourselves, or the diabetics that I know, it's like potentially something different could have happened, which it might not have, but at the same time I didn't want to go with that feeling of like, I don't know that answer, or I don't know what to do if this happens. So having those conversations, and not just one with one person, but as many as possible, definitely was something that I'll do again for my next challenge in November.
That was
Such a
going to be
massive. Oh, sorry,
I was
Josh.
going to say the last question. You don't have to tell anyone, but yeah, I've got another plan going on, haven't you?
Yeah, so it's out there anyway, so I'll let everyone know. So in November, I'll be going over to Nepal, to Mount Everest, not to do the full thing. I'm not that brave just yet, but I'll be doing Everest Base Camp, which is about 5,500 meters high, so like 18,000 foot high in the sky. So I'll be doing that, a 12-day trek, obviously completely different than Kilimanjaro, not as high as Kilimanjaro, but different weather, different terrain, it's just different altogether. So that's my plan to spend the whole of November away climbing that Mount Everest Base Camp. So I'm looking forward to that.
Best of luck, Mike. Best of luck.
Yeah, best of luck there, Mike. What a journey of a lifetime you've had. So what made you decide to climb Kilimanjaro?
Well, I've always been intrigued by Africa, and I've always been intrigued to go and see what Africa's like. And obviously, I mean, a big thing for me was climbing. There was a day back in 2019, I think it was August the 10th it was, I climbed a mountain, and I feel like on that day, my journey, not just with diabetes, but in personal life as well, changed. And my whole approach to change towards life just on that day, and it was on a mountain. So I felt like that means a lot to me. So that's how I'm going to inspire other people to go about. Obviously, the people are going to get, obviously, it's going to change for different people in different ways. But for me, that's what I'm going to use to obviously put a positive word about diabetes and show that obviously you can still go and do whatever that you want to do, no matter what circumstances it is. But at the same time, it's making people understand that I haven't just done this without taking care of myself. Like I've obviously been 10 years diabetic. For the first 5 years, I was an absolute nightmare. Then my mum put up with me for the first 5 years, but from that day back in 2019, the next 5 years has been like a total switch in my approach, the way I look after myself, the way I exercise, the way I would do whatever, which is now obviously led, because I did buckle back in 2018 and it just weren't the right time, because I weren't doing the stuff that I'm doing now. So obviously it just proves that change is a good thing, and people can change, and it's not all doom and gloom being diabetic. It's all you can use it to your advantage.
Amazing. I'm really looking forward to hearing about your next adventure. So hopefully we can get you back.
Yeah, I'll be there.
Thank you so much for that, Mike. That was an amazing story. So I think you're interviewing Amelia next. Is that right, Mike?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
Fantastic. So we won't let you leave the stage yet.
Nice. Right then, so let's get into it. So obviously, I mean, the topic of conversation is something that is close to me as well. And obviously, when I moved away back in 2018 to America for 2.5 years, but the way I approached it is going to be completely different to the way you approached it. So first question is, what are you going to do to prepare yourself in the best way to move abroad in September?
Yeah, so I've kind of made myself a list of the things that I've done to prepare, because I knew that I'd forget those. So obviously I've got all the like normal non-diabetes related things that I've had to do. So I'm moving abroad as part of my degree program. So there's a lot of paperwork to do for that. And I'm going to be working as a teaching assistant in Austria, just outside of Vienna. So I had to sort all the like practical stuff for that. But then in terms of diabetes, so roughly going in order, in terms of prescription and sorting out how that works. Basically, over the last year, I've been talking to my healthcare professionals about it, but no one's really had a definite answer until the last couple of weeks. And I've now been told that I can get a 3-month prescription before I leave, and then I have to register with a doctor and a pharmacy in the city that I'm moving to, which is a little bit stressful in that I can't do that until I'm actually there. But knowing that I have the 3 months worth before I go should be enough to give me plenty of time to get it sorted. Then seemingly little things. But so when I was applying for my accommodation, it was just things like including in my application that I'd need to have a mini fridge in my room so that I can store my insulin. And also when I applied for my placement in the first place, I was able to specify that I'd like to be based in a town or city rather than a small village, so that there's like easy access to a doctor or a hospital just in case something were to happen. I didn't really want to be stranded in a little German or Austrian village with no access to like a hospital or like that emergency care. Then once I got my placement, I contacted the school I'll be working at to confirm that I'll be allowed my phone on me for my like CGM readings, and also to make them aware of the fact that I'm diabetic and that therefore I will need my insulin and sugar on me at all times. And then the last thing I think so far that I've really done to prepare is that I've started learning how to say key like diabetic related things in German and writing this down so that I've got it to refer back to. Because although I have been studying German for probably like 7 or 8 years now, obviously it doesn't really ever come up, the words that you need for diabetes. So that's kind of what I'm learning for myself at the moment.
Nice. To be fair, it sounds like you're a lot more prepared than I was back in 2018. And obviously seems like it's a lot more of a challenge. I moved to America, so obviously they can speak our language, so moving
Yeah.
to a
I think that
country
makes a big difference, actually, the language barrier. And I mean, I'm doing it as part of my degree. My degree is French and German. So the rest of the language is technically fine. It's literally just the diabetes related stuff. But unfortunately, they don't teach you. So
Yeah, I'm pretty certain you're like, yeah, I mean, seems, as I said, it seems like you're fully prepared in plenty of different ways. What would you say is the biggest thing that you've had to prepare for and look into so that you're ready to move out there?
I think it's the prescription and like having access to everything that I have access to here. So I was reading the other day as well that the Austrian healthcare system don't always provide CGMs. So it's looking into, if they don't, then like financing that, or like, yeah, basically how I'm going to go about that. And I think just the biggest issue has been that none of my healthcare professionals had a definite answer until about 2 weeks ago, and I move at the start of September. So it hasn't given me that long to kind of get my head around what I actually need to sort before I go. And the university also didn't really know what advice to give me. So yeah, I think that's probably been the biggest like stress and the biggest thing I've had to do to prepare. But I'm hoping that once I get there, and I know one of my parents is gonna come with me when I move to help me like work out registering with a doctor or something. So hopefully as soon as I'm there I can get it set up and then it'll be all right.
To be fair, I could have used with you back in 2018, to be honest, because I didn't think hardly any of this when I was moving to America.
Yeah.
But I mean, it seems like you're obviously, with all that preparation and organisation, you're going to be looking forward to it a lot. So outside of the diabetes, what are you most looking forward to while you're over there?
I mean, I've wanted to do this like year abroad for years. I mean, I decided when I was about 15 that I wanted to study languages at uni, and every degree for languages in the UK has a year abroad as part of it. So I'm really excited just to be able to go and experience living in a different culture for a bit. And I potentially want to go into teaching as a career, like after uni. So having that experience of being a teaching assistant while I'm there I'm really excited for that.
Nice, nice. Is there any way we can follow? Are you going to be doing any social media stuff while you're away? And is there any way we
Yeah.
can track you while you're on your journey and stuff?
Yeah, so I'll be keeping my Instagram up to date, which is Amelia's diabetes journey. And then I've not set it up yet, but I am hoping to document the process on YouTube, because probably around 6 months ago, when I was like starting to plan it all, I was looking everywhere online for people who had documented their year living abroad with diabetes, and just could not find anything. So I kind of want to make that myself, so that then people in the future have something to kind of refer to and like look to when they're not sure about certain things. So I will definitely kind of advertise that on my Instagram once I set up the YouTube for it.
Yeah. So yeah, I've just seen a comment there in the group. It sounds exciting. It definitely does sound exciting.
Yeah.
Moving abroad, obviously it's a big step. It's a big
Yeah.
it's a big opportunity, and it's kind of a scary one at the same time.
Yeah. I think I'm kind of equal parts scared and excited at the moment.
And I feel like that's a great combination to have, because I feel like with the scary side, it allows you to prepare, organize, get yourself ready, make sure you're ticking every single box that you could possibly think of.
Definitely.
But obviously there's so many people who potentially wouldn't take that step because they're too scared, and there's not much excitement because they feel like they're worried that they haven't ticked every single box. So
Yeah.
if you
I
have to
think
pick
for me,
one.
sorry, just gonna say, I think for me in a way it's kind of good, because my year abroad is compulsory for my degree. So I would have to go through a lot of kind of a very long process if I didn't want to do the year abroad anymore. And because I was only diagnosed with type 1 diabetes once I'd started my degree, it's meant that I've just kind of had to do it, and I haven't really given myself the option of dropping out of it. And I think that's good in a way, because it's just made me realize that like I do want to do it, and I am actually excited for it as well as being scared. Whereas I think if I'd had almost more of an option not to do it, then I would have been more tempted to kind of give in to how anxious I was when I started planning it.
Nice. To be fair, that links to my final question. Obviously, you had kind of fell into the moment where you kind of had to do it to finish your degree and stuff like that. And you had to go down. Yeah, you had to go down this route to obviously finish it and all that kind of stuff. But obviously, for someone who hasn't really got that option, but has got the option whether to go or stay at home, what would you say there's, for the last question, what would you say there's, if you had to pick one bit of advice that's helped you take those steps, those like courageous steps, if you had to pick one bit of advice for somebody who's potentially on the fence whether to go or whether to stay, what would you say to them?
I think something that one of my friends said to me actually was that I realistically was going to struggle a little bit with the adjustments of my diabetes to the way my life was changing year by year anyway. And so to give up something that I had wanted to do for years, like moving abroad, to give that up just because of my diabetes diagnosis would be such a shame, because then, you know, in a few years' time, if I looked back and I was like, oh, I really wish I'd gone, and then don't really have the opportunity to do that later necessarily, and not in the same way anyway. So I think it's just a case of making the most of the opportunities, and just also realizing that the support networks that you have while you're here don't just disappear because you're in a different country for a year. So like being part of Together Type 1 and that community doesn't just disappear because you're not here for in-person events. And I think that was a big thing, that once I realized that, it made me feel much more confident about going and knowing that people would still be supporting me, even if they weren't there physically.
Nice. I like that. And that's why obviously these support groups help out massively in it, because it allows people to open their eyes to more than just what's in front of them. And I feel like that's definitely opened my eyes since I joined last year. So I definitely do resonate and agree with that. But great story. Sounds like it's going to be a great year for you. And I hope you go and smash it. Hope you enjoy it. Have the best time over there.
I'm hoping it's going to be lots of fun.
I'm sure it will be. Good stuff.
Thank you.